Well, good evening. Tuesday, and the theme this week is going to be horror. I've had to add a warning to the stream. This is not for the faint-hearted. We will be reading through some chapters of one of my favorite, no, you know what? My favorite author of all time. His name's Darren Shan, and we will be reading his third book in a series called The Demonata. And this one's called Slawter. It's a brilliant book. I would have started with the first, but I don't know what I've done with it. I've lent it to somebody and they have not returned it. So I'll have a look at that. Sure, if we finish this one, maybe we can go back. But I don't think you need to know what's happened from the first one for the third one. I could have gone with the second one, and I do have it on me, but it's a different character. If you've read the series, you'll know. And I just feel like you're better off starting with Grubs. But we'll begin. My eyes! They've stabbed out my eyes! I shoot awake. I start to struggle up from my bed. An arm hits the side of my head, knocks me down. A man screams, "My eyes! Who took my eyes?" "Dervish!" I roar, rolling off the bed, landing beside the feet of my frantic uncle. "It's only a dream. Wake up!" "My eyes!" Dervish yells again. I can see his face now, illuminated by a three-quarters full moon, eyes open wide but seeing nothing. Fear scribbled into every line of his features. He lifts his right foot, brings it down towards my head, hard. I make like a turtle and only just avoid having my nose smashed. "You took them," he hisses, sensing my presence, fear turning to hate. He bends and grabs my throat. His fingers tighten. Dervish is thin. It doesn't look like much, but his appearance is deceptive. He could crush my throat, easy. I swipe at his hand, yanking my neck away at the same time. Break free, scrabble backwards, halted by the bed. Dervish lunges at me. I kick at his head, both feet. No time to worry about hurting him. Connect firmly. Drive him back. He grunts, shakes his head, loses focus. "Dervish," I shout, "it's me, Grubs. Wake up. It's only a nightmare. You have to stop before you—" "The master," Dervish cuts in, fear filling his face again. He's staring at the ceiling, rather, where his eyes are fixed. "Lord Loss," he starts to cry. "Don't, please, not again. My eyes, leave them alone, please." "Dervish," I say, softly this time, rising, rubbing the side of my head where he hit me, approaching him cautiously. "Dervish, Derv the perv, where's your nerve?" Knowing from past nights that rhymes draw his attention. Derv on the floor, where's the door? Derv without eyes, what's the surprise? He blinks, his head lowers a fraction. Sight returns gradually. His pupils were black holes. Now they look quasi-normal. "It's okay," I tell him, moving closer, wary in case the nightmares suddenly flare up again. "You're home, with me. Lord Loss can't get you. Your eyes are fine. It was just a nightmare." "Grubs?" Dervish wheezes. "Yes, boss." "That's really you? You're not an illusion? He hasn't created an image of you to torment me?" "Don't be stupid. Not even Michelangelo could sculpt a face this perfect." Dervish smiles. The last of the nightmare passes. He sits on the floor and looks at me through watery globes. "How you doing, big guy?" "Coolio." "Did I hurt you?" he asks quietly. "You couldn't if you tried," I smirk, not telling him about the hit to the head, the hand on my throat, or the foot at my face. I sit beside him, drape an arm around his shoulder. He hugs me, murmurs, "It was so real. I thought I was back there. And he weeps, sobbing like a child. And I hold him, talking softly as the moon descends, telling him it's okay. He's home. He's safe. No longer in the universe of demons. Never trust the fairy tales. Any story that ends with, "they all lived happily ever after," is a crock. There's no happy endings. No endings. Full stop. Life goes on. There's always something new around the corner. You can overcome major obstacles, face great danger, look evil in the eye, and live to tell the tale. But that's not the end. Life sweeps you forward, swings you round, bruises and batters you, drops some new drama or tragedy in your lap, never lets go until the one true end, death. As long as you're breathing, your story's still going. If the rules of fairy tales did work, my story would have ended on a high 4 months ago. That's when Dervish regained his senses and everything seemed to return to normal. But that was a false ending, a misleading happy pause. I had to write a short autobiography for an English assignment recently, a snappy, zappy summing up of my life. I had to discard my first effort. It was just too close to the bone, and it would have only led to trouble if I'd handed it in. I wrote an edited, watered down version and submitted that instead. I got a B minus. But I kept it original. It's hidden under, or I kept the original. It's hidden under a pile of clothes in my wardrobe. I dig it out now to read, to pass some time. I've read through it a lot these past few weeks, usually early in the morning, after an interrupted night when I can't sleep. I was born Grubbage Grady. One sister, Bertilda, Grubbs, and Gret for short. Normal, boring lives for a long time. Then Gret turned into a werewolf. It's a genetic flaw in my family. Lots of my ancestors have turned into werewolves. It hits you in the teens, if you're one of the unlucky ones. You lose your mind, your body alters, you become a blood-crazed beast and spend the rest of your life locked in a cage, unless your relatives kill you. There's no cure, except one, but that can even be worse than the curse. See, demons are real, gross, misshapen, magical beings with a hatred of humans matched only by their taste for human flesh. They live in their own universe, but some can still cross into our world. One of the demonata, that's the proper term, is called Lord Loss, a real charmer. No nose or heart, a hole in his chest full of snakes, 8 arms, horribly pale red flesh, lots of cuts on his body, from which blood flows in a never-ending stream. He's big on misery, feeds off on happiness, grief, and terror of humans, moves among us silently when he crosses into our universe, invisible to normal eyes, dropping in on funerals the way you do. Would pop into a cafe, dining on our despair, savouring our sorrow. Lord Loss is a powerful demon master. Most masters can't cross from their universe into ours, but he's an exception. He has the power to cure lycanthropy, and he can lift the curse from an infected Grady. Teenagers, rid them of their werewolf genes, return them to humanity, except, he's a demon, so why the hell should he? What are you reading? It's Dervish, standing in the doorway of my room, mug of coffee in one hand, eyes still wide and freaky from his nightmare. My autobiography, I tell him. He frowns. What? I'm going to publish my memoirs. I'm thinking of Life with Demons as a title, or maybe Hairy Boys and Girls of the Grady Clan. What do you think? Dervish stares at me uneasily. You're weird, he mutters, then trudges away. Wonder where I get that from, I retort and shake my head. Return to the autobiography. Lucky for us, Lord Loss is a chess addict. Chess is the one thing he enjoys almost as much as a weeping human. But he doesn't get to play very often. One of his demonic buddies, or rather, none of his demonic buddies know the rules, and humans aren't inclined to test their skills against him. One of my more cunning ancestors was Bartholomew Gradax. Anyway, a magician, not a guy who pulls rabbits out of a hat, full-on Merlin, and Gandalf class master of magic. He figured out a way to cash in on Lord Loss's love of chess. He challenged the demon master to a series of games. For each match Bartholomew won, Lord Loss would cure a member of his family. If old Bart lost, Lord Loss would get to torture and kill him. Bartholomew won all his matches, but future members of the family, those with a flair for magic, who make contact with Lord Loss, weren't so fortunate. Some triumphed, but some lost. The rules altered over the years. Now, if a parent wants to challenge Lord Loss, they need a partner. pair face not only the master, but two of his familiars as well. One plays chess with the big guy, while the other battles his servants. If either loses, both are slaughtered, along with the affected teen. If they win, one travels to Lord Loss's realm and fights him there. The other one returns home with the cured kid. Time works differently in the universe of the Demonata. A year of our time can be a day there, or a decade, or a century. When the partner goes off with Lord Loss to do battle, their body remains in our world, only their soul can cross over. But they become a mindless zombie, and they stay that way until their soul triumphs. If that happens, their mind returns, and they resume their normal life. If they don't fare so well, then they stay a zombie until the day they die. Are you coming down for breakfast? Dervish yells from the bottom of the giant staircase, which links the floors of the mansion in which we live. In a minute, I yell back. I've just I've just come to the bit when you zombied out on me. Stop messing about, he roars. I'm scrambling eggs, and if you're not down in 60 seconds, too bad. Damn, he knows my weaknesses. Coming, I shout, getting up, reaching for my clothes, tossing the bio aside for later. Dervish does a mean scrambled eggs. Best I've ever tasted. I finish off a plateful without stopping for breath, then eagerly go for seconds. I'm built on the big side, a mammoth compared to most of my schoolmates, with an appetite to match. Dervish is wearing a pair of tracksuit bottoms and t-shirt, no shoes or socks. His grey hair is frizzled, except on top, where he's bald as a snooker ball. Hasn't shaved. He used to have a beard, but got rid of it recently. Doesn't smell good. Sweaty and stale. He's this way most days. Has been ever since he got back. You eating or not? I ask. He looks over blankly from where he's sitting, close to the hob. He's been staring out the window, the grey autumn sky, not touching his food. Huh? He says. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. He looks down at his plate, smiles weakly, sticks his fork into the eggs, stirs them, then gazes out the window again. I remember the nightmare, he said. They cut my eyes out. They were circling me, tormenting me, using my empty sockets as... Hey, I stop him. I'm a kid. I shouldn't be hearing this. You'll scar me for life with stories like that. Dervish grins, warmth in it this time. Took more than a scary story to scar you, he grunts, and starts to eat. I help myself to thirds and return to the autobiography, not needing the sheet of paper to finish, able to recall it perfectly. I have a younger half-brother, Bill E. Spleen. He doesn't know we're brothers, thinks Dervish is his father. I met him when I came to live with Dervish after my parents died trying to save Gret. I spent a while in the loony asylum first. Billy and I became friends. I thought he was an oddball, but harmless. Then he changed into a werewolf. Dervish explained the situation to me. He told me Billy was my brother, laid out the family history and our link to Lord Loss. I wasn't keen to get involved, but Dervish thought I had what it takes to kick demon ass. I told him he was mad as a moose, but hell, I don't want to come across as all heroic. But Billy was my brother. Mum and Dad put their lives on the line for Gret. I figured I owed Billy the same sort of commitment. So we faced Lord Loss and his familiars. Artery and vein, a vicious, bloodthirsty pair. I got the better of Lord Loss at chess. More luck than plan. The Demon Master was furious, but rules are rules. So I got to return to reality along with cured Billy, and Dervish won himself a ticket to the demon out of hell. Go toe to toe with a big double L on his home turf. Double L? Oh, Lord Loss. I'm not sure what happened there, how they fought, what sort of mess Dervish went through, now time passed for him. The manner of his victory over Lord Loss. For more than a year I guarded his body, helped by a team of lawyers. My uncle, he macho reach, and Mira Flame, one of Dervish's best friends. I went back to school, rebuilt my life, and babysat Dervish. Then, without warning, he returned. I woke up one morning and the zombie was gone. He was his old self, talking, laughing, brain intact. We celebrated for days. Us, Billy, Mira, we all lived happily ever after. The end. Except, of course, it wasn't. Life isn't a fairy tale. Stories don't end. Before she left, Mira took me aside and warned me to be careful. She said there was no way to protect Dervish's state of mind. According to the recorded accounts of the few who have gone through the same ordeal as him, it often took a person a long time to settle after a one-on-one encounter with Lord Loss. Sometimes they never properly recovered. We don't know what's going on inside his head, she whispered. He looks fine, but that could change. Watch him, Grubs. Be prepared for mood swings. Try and help. Do what you can, but don't be afraid to call me for help. I did call when the nightmares started, when Dervish first attacked me in his sleep, mistook me for a demon, and tried to cut my heart out. Luckily, in his delirium, he picked up a spoon instead of a knife. But there was nothing Mira could do, short of a few calming spells, and recommend he visit a psychiatrist. Dervish rejected that idea, but she threatened to take me away from him if he didn't. So he went to see one, a guy who knew about demons, who Dervish could be honest with. After the second session, the psychiatrist rang Mira and said he never wanted to see Dervish again. He found their sessions too upsetting. What kind of psychiatrist is that? Mira discussed the possibility of having Dervish committed or hiring bodyguards to look after him, but I rejected both suggestions. So, against her wishes, we carried on living in this spooky old mansion. It hadn't been too bad. Dervish rarely gets the nightmares any more than 2 or 3 times a week. I've grown used to them. Waking up in the middle of the night to screams. It's no worse than being disturbed by a baby's cries. Really, it isn't. He's not that much of a threat. We keep the knives locked away and bolted, the other weapons in the mansion. It's dotted with axes, maces, spears, and swords, all sorts of cool stuff, to the walls. I usually keep my door locked too, just to be safe. The only reason it was open last night was that Dervish had thrown a fit both nights before, and it's rare for him to fall prey to nightmares 3 times in a row. I thought I was safe. That's why I didn't bother with the lock. It's my fault, not Dervish's. I will kill him for you, master, Dervish says softly. I lower my fork. What? He turns his blank face, looking like he did when his soul was fighting Lord Loss. My heart rate quickens. Then he grins. Asshole, I snap. Dervish has a sick sense of humour. I go back to wolfing down my breakfast, and Dervish tucks into his, not caring that the scrambled eggs were cold. We're an odd couple. A big lump of a teenager like me playing nursemaid to a balding, mentally disturbed adult like Dervish. And yeah, there's nights when he frightens me, and I feel like I can't take it anymore. When I cry, it's not fair. Dervish fought the good fight and won. That should have been the end of it. Happy ever after. But the stories don't end. They continue as long as you're alive, and you have to get on with things. Turn the page, start a new chapter, find out what's in store for you next, and keep your fingers crossed that's not too awful. Even if you don't, or even if you know in your heart and soul, it most probably will be. And that's the end of chapter 1. Going to take a very short break and then we'll do the next chapter. See you in a second. Turn on the light. I'll need to learn how to mute this mic. All right. Chapter 2, Pray at Him. School was strange when I first went back. I'd spent months outside the system, first in the asylum and then in the mansion with Dervish. It took me a while to find my feet. For the first couple of terms, I didn't really speak to anybody except Bill E. and the school counsellor, Mr. Monch, better known as Misery Monch because of his long face. I'd always been popular in my old school. Lots of friends, active in several sports teams. Mr. Cool. All that had changed at Carcery Vale. I was shy, unsure of myself, reluctant to get involved in conversations or commit to after-school events. On top of the hell I'd been through, there was Dervish to consider. He needed me at home. I became an anonymous kid, one who spent a lot of time by himself or with a similarly awkward friend. Step forward, Billy Spleen. Things are different now. I've come out of my shell a bit. I'm more like the old me, not the quiet kid in class, afraid to speak to other kids. I've always been bigger than most people my age. In the old days, I was a show-off and used my bulk to command respect. At the Vale, I kept my head bent, my shoulders hunched, trying to suck in my frame and make myself seem smaller. Not anymore. I'm no longer Mr. Flash. But I'm not hiding now. I don't feel like I need to. I've made new friends. Charlie Roll, Robbie McCarthy, Mary Hayes, and Loch Gossel. Loch's big, but not as massive as me, but closer to my size than anybody else. He wrestles a lot. Real wrestling, not the showbiz stuff you see on TV. He's been trying to get me to join the team ever since I started school. I resisted for a long time, but now I think I'm going to give it a go. Locke has a younger sister, Rennie. She's pretty cute. And uh, even if she does have the same nose, or rather have a nose that would put Gonzo to shame, I stare at her a lot, and sometimes she makes eyes back. I think she'll go out with me if I asked. I haven't. Not yet, but soon. Maybe, if I can work up the nerve. The end of a typical school day, yawning through classes, desperate for lunchtime, so I can hang out with my friends and chat about movies, music, TV, computer games, whatever. Billy joins us for some of it. I don't spend as much time with Billy as I used to. He doesn't fit in with my new friends. They think he's geekish. They don't slag him off when I'm around, but I know they do when I'm not. I feel bad, and I want to try to help Billy relax so he can get his real side. But he just gets nervous around others and acts differently, becomes the butt of their jokes. Thinking about Billy as I walk home, I don't want us to stop being friends. He's my brother, and he was really good to me whenever I first moved here. But it's difficult because I don't want to lose any of my new friends either. I guess I'll have to work harder to make him feel like part of the group. Try and be one like one of those TV kids who always solves their problems by the end of each show. Dervish is sitting on the stairs whenever I let myself in. I'm dripping wet. It's pouring, and has been for the last couple of hours. Normally when the weather's bad, he picks me up on his motorbike. When there was no sign of him today, I figured his mood hadn't improved since breakfast. I was right. He's as blank as he was this morning, staring off into space, not registering me until I'm right in front of him. Dervish! Hey, Dervishio! Earth to Dervish! Are you reading me, Captain? He blinks, frowns, as if he doesn't know who I am, then smiles. Grubs, you're alive. I thought... His expression clears. Sorry, I was miles away. I sit beside him. Bad day. Can't remember, he replies. Why are you home early? I hold up my watch and tap it. Dervish reads the time and sighs. I'm losing it, Grubs. My insides tighten. I don't let Dervish see my fear. Losing what? Your sanity? Can't lose what you never had. My grip. Dervish looks down at his feet, bare and dirty. I wasn't like this before. I wasn't this distracted and empty. Was I? He looks at me pleadingly. You've been through hell, Derv, I tell him quietly. You can't expect to recover without a few hiccups. I know, but I wasn't this way, right? Some days I can't remember. I feel like I've always just been like this. No, I say firmly. It's just a phase. It'll pass. All things must pass, Dervish mutters. Then he looks at me sideways, his cool blue eyes coming into focus. Why are you wet? Took a bath, forgot to strip. I rap his forehead with my knuckles, then point to the window and the rain battering on the panes. Numbnuts. Oh, Dervish says, I should have picked you up. No worries. I rise and stretch, dripping steadily. I'm going up to the shower to change into dry clothes. I'll stick this lot in the wash. Anything you want me to add? I did all the jobs around the house when Dervish was a vegetable. Hard to break the habit. No, I don't think so. Dervish stares at his left hand. There's a black mark on it. A small D. There was always something I meant to tell you. What? He clicks his fingers. I had a phone call, a follow-up to some emails I've been getting recently. Ever heard of someone called David Haim? No, can't say I pause. Hold on. Not David A. Haim? The movie producer? That's her. I thought it was a guy. Nope, she uses David A on her movies, but she's Davida. Do you know about her? Sure, she makes horror movies. Zombie Zest, which is weird. Nightmares. That's like nightmares, only two words. It's about evil mayors who band together and set up a meat production plant, except the meat is human flesh. Win many Oscars? Dervish asks. Swept the board, I chuckled. I can't believe she's a woman. I always thought. But what about her? I didn't think you were into horror flicks. She phoned me earlier. I do a double take. David A. Hem called you? David A. Hem? Yes. Dervish squints at me. Have I grown a second head? Hell, it's David A. Hem, Dervish. That's like saying Steven Spielberg was on the line or George Lucas. Oh, well, okay, not as big as those, but still. I didn't know she was famous, Dervish says. She told me a lot of names of some of her movies, but I don't watch a lot of films. She sounds more like she was a cult director. She is. She doesn't make films with any big name stars, but her movies are great. Anyone who loves horror knows about David A. Hem, though I'm not sure many know she's a woman. That's a big sticking point for you, isn't it? Dervish grins. You're not turning into a chauvinist, are you? No, I shake my head. Water flies through my ginger hair and splatters the walls. What did she want? She's making a new movie. Asked if she could meet me. She heard I know a lot about occult. Wants to pick my brain. He tweaks his chin, forgetting his beard isn't there. I hope she doesn't mean that literally. Did you say yes? I ask excitedly. I said I'd think about it. Dervish, you've got to. It's David A. Hem. Did she say when she'd come here? Can I meet her? Do you think? Easy, Tiger. Dervish laughs. We didn't discuss where we'd meet. But do you think I should agree to it? Absolutely. Then meet we shall, Dervish says, getting to his feet and heading to his office. Anything to please Master Grady? I tramp up the stairs after him, pulling off my clothes, thinking about how cool it would be if I could meet David A. Hem, and how weird it would be that one of the world's premier horror producers is a woman. David A. Hem's a woman? No bloody way, Locke howls. You're having us on, Robbie challenges me. How stupid do you think we are? Charlie huffs. Of course she's a woman, Mary says. We cop at her. You didn't know? No, Locke says. Did you? Yes. How long? Mary shrugs. I don't know, years. And you never told us, Robbie barks. What, never came up? Mary laughs. I've no interest in horror movies. I always tune out you guys whenever you start on that rubbish. Then how did you know she's a woman? I asked. There was a feature on her in a magazine my mum reads, Mary explains. I think the headline was The Horror Producer Chick Who Beats the Boys at Their Own Game. They're nearly as excited as I am. Most of my friends don't know what to make of Dervish. In a way, he's cool, the adult who rides a motorbike, dresses in denim, lets me do pretty much what I like. On the other hand, he sometimes comes across as a complete nutter. Plus, they know he was of age for more than a year. But now that he's in talks with the slickest, sickest producer in recent horror movies, his cred rises like a helium balloon. They want to know how she knows about him, when she's coming, and what the movie's about. Act mysterious and secretive, giving nothing away, but dropping hints that I'm fully clued in. In truth, I don't know more than they do. Dervish wasn't able to get through to her last night. He left a message that was waiting for her to pick up the phone whenever I left this morning. Did she call? Who? I groan, wishing Dervish wasn't a complete airhead. David A. Hem, of course. Did she? Oh, yeah, she rang. And? I practically shriek as Dervish focuses on getting dinner ready. She'll pop by within next week. Here? I gasp. Carcery Vale? No, he smirks. Here, this house. I told her she could stay the night if she wanted, although I don't know if. David A. Hem's going to stay in our house, I shout. David A. Dervish corrects me. Dervish, the terrible things I've said about you, the awful names I've called you, I take them all back. Thanks, Dervish laughs, stops and frowns. What awful names? Everyone wants David A. Hem's autograph. They want to meet her, have dinner with us, maybe snag a part in her next movie. Locke auditions for me several times a day, moaning and screaming, pretending bits of his body have been chopped off, quoting lines from Zombie Zest and Nightmares. We elected a devil. That's not my hand on your knee. Mustard or mayo with your brains? Draws curious stares from teachers and kids who haven't heard the big news. Billy talks up script ideas, reckons he can picture and become the brains of the next 5 movies. Writers are getting younger all the time, he insists. Producers want fresh talent, original ideas, guys who can think outside the box. You're about as far outside the box as they come, Locke laughs. I wouldn't have to write the whole script myself, Billy says, ignoring the jibe. I could collaborate. I'm a team player. Yeah, Locke snorts. Trouble is, you're a substitute. I let them scheme and dream, smile smugly, as if they're just crazy, dreaming kids. Of course, I'm as full of wild notions as they are. I just prefer to play it cool. Days pass. No sign of David Ahame. The weekend comes and goes. I bug Dervish constantly, asking if there's been any contact. Sometimes he pretends he doesn't know what I'm talking about just to wind me up. By Tuesday, I'm starting to wonder if it's a gag, if Dervish ever spoke to David Ahame at all. It would be a weird, unfunny joke, but Dervish is into weird and unfunny. I'll look her right dope in school if she never shows. I'll have to invent a story, pretend she was called away on an emergency. Thinking about excuses I could use as I'm walking home. Nothing too simple, like a sick relative or having to pick up an award. Needs to be more dramatic. Her house burnt to the ground. She caught bubonic plague and had to go into isolation. Warming to the plague theory. People can get it these days, maybe? When a car pulls up beside me, a window rolls down. A thin, black-haired woman leans across. Excuse me, she says. Do you know where Dervish Grady lives? Yeah, I bent down, excitement building. I'm his nephew, Grubbage. I mean, Grubbs. Grubbs Grady. That's me. Can't remember the last time I called myself Grubbage. What a dork. Grubbs, the woman says, nodding shortly. Yes, I know about you. You do? Unable to hide my delight. Dervish told you about me? Whoa, that's great. Yeah, cool. I know about you too, of course. Really? She sounds surprised. Sure, I've been waiting all week for you. You knew I was coming? Sharp this time. Yeah, Dervish told me. She taps the steering wheel with her fingers. They're cut short, down to the flesh. Well, may I give you a lift home, Grubs? That way you can direct me as we go. Sure. I open the door and slide in, put my seatbelt on, smile wide as Davida, him. She smiles back, thinly, a narrow, pale face, moody, if not downright gloomy, just the way I'd expect a horror producer to look. Just go straight, I tell her. The road runs by our house. You can't miss it. Only mansion in the neighbourhood. Silence. David is focused on the road. I'm trying to think of something to say as casual and witty, but my mind's a blank, so I check her out. Thin all over, long neck, bony hands, straight black hair, dark eyes, dull white shirt and skirt, flat plain shoes. No jewellery except one ring on her hand, with a large gold L in the middle of the flat silver. How have you been, Grubs? She asked suddenly. Fine. I know something of your past, what happened last year with Billy Spleen. What do you know about me and Bill E? I ask, suspiciously, guard rising. I know about lycanthropy, how you fought it. Dervish told you that? I cry, astonished. How has Billy been? Any recurrences in his old patterns? Of course not. We cured him. He's normal now. And you? She asked quietly. Her eyes flick across, cold and calculating. Who the hell are you? I ask, a tremble in my voice. Who do you think I am? She replies. I thought you were David A. Hem, but you're not, are you? In answer, she raises a finger and points. That must be the mansion. She pulls into our drive. I have a bad feeling in my gut. Not sure who this woman is or how she knows about Billy. She kills the engine and looks back at me calmly. Her eyes are really dark, a robot-like expression. No makeup, thin lips, almost invisible, a nose with a wartish mole on the right nostril. Shall we go together? Or do you want to go on ahead and tell your uncle I'm here? She says. That depends. What's your name? She only smiles in reply and looks more normal when she smiles, like a teacher. Stern, but human. I relax slightly. You can come with me, I decide, not wanting to leave her in case she's an old friend of Dervish's and I appear rude. Thank you, she says, and gets out of her car. She's smoothing down her skirt and studying the mansion when I step out. Nice place, she comments, then raises a thin eyebrow, the signal for me to lead the way. I start ahead of her, whistling, not letting her see that I'm unnerved, acting like she's an ordinary visitor. In through the oversized doors, the smell of a juicy, sizzling steak drifts from the kitchen. Goodness, the woman says, looking at the high ceilings, the size of the rooms, the weapons on the wall, the staircase. This way, I tell her, heading to the kitchen. You're just in time for dinner. She follows slowly, absorbing the surroundings. Obviously hasn't been here before. I keep trying to put a name to her face, thinking of all the people Dervish has mentioned in the past. I reach the kitchen. Dervish is hard at work on the steak. No, he shouts before I say anything. She hasn't rung, and there hasn't been any sign of her. Now stop pestering me, or I might wave company, I interrupt. Dervish turns questioningly. The woman enters the kitchen. I step aside so he can see her. Instant recognition. His face goes white, then red. He steps away from the hob, abandoning the steak. Eyes tight, lips quivering with anger. You, he spits the word out. It's been a long time, Dervish, the woman says softly, not moving forward to shake his hand. You look better than I expected. I thought she was David A. Hem, I tell him. She's not, he barks. She's prey at him. Pray at him, I echo. Pray at him, the woman says, stressing the syllables. She's one of the lambs, Dervish says with a sneer. And the fear which was ticking away at me in the car kicks like a solid, or kicks in solid, like a nail being hammered into my gut. All right, end of chapter 2. Go on then, we'll have another chapter. In Dervish's study, like most of the rooms, it's huge, But whereas the others have bare walls with stone or wood floorboards, the study is carpeted and the walls are covered with leather panels. There are two large desks, bookcases galore, a PC, laptop, typewriter, paper and pens. There used to be 5 chess sets, but not anymore. The swords and axes which hung from the walls are gone too. Pray at him doesn't want me here. That's obvious from her disapproving look. Dervish doesn't care. He's seated behind the computer on his large desk, one hand on the mouse, moving it in small circles, waiting for his unwelcome guest to speak. Prayatim is seated opposite. I'm standing closer to the door, ready to leave as Dervis tells me to. Pray finally speaks. Billy Spleen still lives with his grandparents? Dervish nodded slowly. I thought you might have moved him in with you to observe. You're not the master observer. You're the master observer, not me, Dervis says quietly. Isn't it dangerous leaving him there? She presses. Billy's time of turning has passed. There's nothing to fear from him now. That's debatable. Pray smiles. No, it isn't. Pray looks at her hands, crossed over her lap, thinks a moment, then nods at me. I'd rather not speak in front of the boy. Is this about him? Dervish responds. Partially. Then you'll have to. I don't really think, she begins. Grub faced the demons with me. Dervish interrupts. He's fought by my side. I'm not going to keep secrets from him. Really? Pray sniffs. You tell him everything about your business? No, but I don't hide things from him. When he asks, I answer. And I'm certain that he's going to be asking about this. You might as well stay and hear it firsthand. Pray sighs. You've never made life easy for us. You always treated the lambs like enemies. We're on the same side, Dervish. You could afford us respect. I do respect you, Dervish says. I just don't trust you. I'd forgotten about the lambs. They loomed large in my thoughts while Dervish was zombified, particularly around the time of the full moon. If I'd found myself turning into a werewolf, I was going to phone them and ask them to put me out of my misery. I guessed down because it was on the next page. But since Dervish returned, I hadn't had time to brood about my potentially fatal genes or the family of bogeymen. The Grady's and their kin have been cursed for a long time. There are a lot of generations. Over the centuries, family members have tried to figure out the cause of the curse and find a cure for it, and develop ways of dealing with the infected children quietly and efficiently. The lambs are the result. A group of scientists, soldiers, and I don't know what else, all focus on the problems and logistics of lycanthropy. They spend a lot of time, money, and effort trying to unlock the secrets of the rogue Grady genes, but they also play a part of executioner when necessary. A lot of parents decide to kill their children if they turn into werewolves, but most can't perform the dirty deed themselves, so they call the lambs, who'll take the transformed child away to do what must be done. How did you find out about Billy? Dervish asks. We keep tabs on all family children, Pray says. But Billy didn't have a trail. There was no evidence that he was turning. Pray smiles. He covered up admirably, gathered the bodies of the animals he slaughtered, disposed of them quietly. But you couldn't be expected to find every corpse. And you couldn't do anything about the operative who saw him sneaking out of the house during the full moon. You had him under direct surveillance, Dervish snaps. Sometimes, yes. Dervish's hands goes rigid on the mouse. You had no right to do that. We had every right, Pray disagrees. If a guardian chooses to deal personally with an infected child, that's none of our business. But you didn't. You gave him free rein. I was in control, Dervish growls. He wasn't a danger to anyone. I was waiting for the right moment to act. I understand, Pray says, but we couldn't take any chances. We guessed you would handle the matter this way if he turned, so for some years we've been keeping an eye on the boy, and on your brother's children too. Dervish starts to retort, stops, and scowls. Tell me why you've come. A few reasons, Pray says. One, to make sure Billy is normal. He is, Dervish says. We cured him. But how certain is your cure? Prey asks. We know about the demons you deal with, but there's much about the process that's a mystery. You and the others who have faced him keep it a secret. Don't let the rest of us benefit. We can't include you, Dervish says stiffly. He deals with one case at a time, and only with those who have some experience with magic. That's how it works. It's not our choice. It's his. The demon, Prey nods. Lord, don't say his name. Dervish stops her. It's dangerous. Prey looks around nervously. I feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. Then Dervish catches my eye and tilts his head ever so slightly. It's a gesture I know well. He does it sometimes instead of winking. I realize he's winding Prey up, giving her a scare. I hide a smile behind my hand and wait for her to settle down. It's not fair, Prey resumes, less composed than before. We've never had any contact with the demon. Maybe we could strike our own deal if you'd put us in touch with him. You couldn't. But you should let us try. We've had this conversation before, Dervish interrupts. We're not having it again. The lambs follow the path of science. Demons are creatures of magic. The two don't mix. End of story. Very well, Bray says, showing open anger for the second, her pale face flushing. You chose to lock us out. There's nothing we can do about that, but it means we don't know all that we should about the cure. We've no proof that it works in the long term, or why, so it's natural for us to be suspicious, to run our own checks, to be safe. Totally natural, Dervish says sarcastically, but I don't think you've waited till now just to make sure Billy wasn't killing. If you were checking on him prior to his change, I'm sure you'd monitored him for the year plus since. So your first reason for being here is a crock. You know Billy's fine. Let's move on to reason two and try to make it a bit more believable this time. Prey glares at Dervish and glances at me. Two, she growls. I want to check on Grubbs. He's at a dangerous age. Both his brother, my stomach tightens another notch. She knows the truth about Billy, and sister turned. We thought it advisable to have a look at him. We kept out of the way while you were indisposed, but now that you're back on your feet, we felt it was a good time to have a chat. She faces me and smiles. How have you been sleeping lately? Any bad dreams? Woken up with dirt under your fingernails or... You know what she's doing, don't you, Grubbs? Dervish asks. Trying to freak me out, I mutter edgily. Correct. If they want to check up on you, they do it secretly. You'd never know they were there. She's saying this to upset you because I've upset her, so ignore it. And you. He says to Prey, tell me the real reason you're here or get the hell out. Very well. Prey stares at Dervish challengingly. We want to run some tests on Billy under our laboratory conditions. You want to turn my nephew into a guinea pig? Dervish laughs harshly. You want me to sign him over so you can poke and prod him, have him urinate into a bottle at your command? It's not like that. We get out, Dervish shouts. You're being unreasonable, Prey objects. Let me finish. Oh, you're finished, Dervish laughs. I've heard enough. Now march back out to your car and... Have you seen a child who's turned? Prey asks me, raising her voice. You must have seen your brother, not only in the early stages of his transformation. It takes a few months for the disease to properly set in. They grow hair, their features distort, their spines twist. I have some photographs which... No, I shout. I don't want to see any photos. I've seen them before. Children your own age, Prey says, quickly as Dervish stands and strides towards her. Some even younger. We have an 8-year-old girl. Her parents don't know about the curse. She killed her mother, chewed her throat open, and... You're so out of here, Dervish snarls, reaching to grab Prey's collar. Wait, I stop him, holding up a hand. Grubs, don't listen to. Just a minute, please. Dervish breathes out heavily and takes a step back. We're trying to help, Prey says, speaking to me, but looking at Dervish. Your uncle is a man of old science. He calls it magic. But to us, it's science by a different name. We're of the new school. Dervish fights one battle at a time. Your mother and father made a choice too. But we're trying to attack the root of the disease. We want everyone to benefit, not just a few. To do that, we have to examine and explore. Your brother is one of the very few victims to beat the curse. If we can study him, unlock him, the secrets behind his remarkable cure, perhaps we can replicate it and save others without the need for demons or so-called magic. You can't, Dervish says wearily. I've told you before, it's not science. It's not of this universe. You can't understand it. You can't mimic it. Don't you think I'd stand in your way if I thought there was even the slightest chance you could? You can't be sure, Prey says. I am. Prey mutters something under her breath, then tries me again. We wouldn't hurt Billy. You and your uncle could come and observe. We just want to know more, to understand, to help. I feel sorry for Prey at them. Despite her scary appearance and manner, she only wants to do good. But the thought of her taking Billy away, locking him up, experimenting on him, I shake my head. You should leave now, Dervish says quietly. We can't help you. You're condemning others to change, to die, Prey says angrily. Dervish shrugs. We've been condemned a long time. We're used to it. He lays his hand on Prey's shoulder. She jerks away from him and stands. My daughter changed, she hisses. I tried to cure her, but I couldn't. She's still alive because I had hope and believe. By denying us, you deny her and all the others like her. How will you sleep with that on your conscience? Lousily, Dervish says. But Billy will sleep sweetly. And to me, that's what matters most, just as your daughter matters most to you. He leans towards her. If the positions were reversed, would you allow your loved ones to be taken? Yes, Pry answers immediately, without question. Well, that's where we differ, because I always question. There are other ways, Bryce says, a dangerous tremble to her tone. We didn't have to ask. We could just take him. Dervish's expression goes dead. Try it, he whispers. See what happens. You couldn't stop us, Prey insists, a red flush of anger rising up her throat. You're powerful, but so are the lambs. We could mess with me and you mess with us all, Dervish interrupts. Do you really want to do that? Do the lambs now think themselves equals as the disciples? We aren't afraid of your kind, Price says, but her words ring hollow. Dervish smiles lazily. If you lay a hand on Billy or Grubs, I'll teach you to be afraid. That's a promise. You don't want us as your enemies, Pry warned him. Nobody stands alone in this world, not even the disciples. You may need us one day. Yes, Dervish agrees, but not today. He points at the door. Prey opens her mouth to try again, realizes she's wasting her breath, shakes her head in disgust, shoots a look at me. Pray you never turn, because if you do, thanks to people like your uncle, we won't be able to help. All we'll be able to do is kill. She strides to the door, throws it open and marches out. The door slams shut several seconds later. Then the faint sound of the engine starting, rising, fading. Dervish stares at me. I stare back. Neither of us say anything. I don't know what my uncle's thinking, but there's only one glaring thought in my head. Who the hell are the disciples? End of that chapter. I will leave it there before my voice fades to nothing. Thanks again for joining me. I'll try to get this series up on YouTube. See if it can survive a copyright strike or two. I don't need the channel anyway. I don't need the money. So don't worry about liking, subscribing, nothing like that. I don't need it. And thanks for listening.